Today we're looking at the manga ending to Shaman King, the Kanzenban ending or the complete ending. We're going to look at not only what happens,
but why
it's important and how it ties back to the rest of the series. Does it succeed in concluding the story that has been told? Just so you know my bias from the start, I generally dislike manga endings. A lot of the time I find they fall into the traps of going too big, too small, or just not being consistent with the whole series it's wrapping up. That being said, I do love this series, so let's go in with an open mind. Here's our menu for today. We're going to do a quick overview of the ending for those who need a refresh, then look at the build-up towards the ending itself and how that ties off the character arcs, then look at those last few chapters after How's Awakening in detail, explaining what's trying to be achieved and discussing if it works or not. Finally, the final chapter epilogue / what the sequel series retroactively give importance to. I'm not going to talk in too much depth there because I think a series really should stand on its own. That's the menu, let's dig in.
the color of this pen is red.
Cap.
Picking up at chapter 264, let's bam our way through this ending in 60 seconds. The Patches and the 4 winning teams of the Shaman fight have just travelled to the new continent underwater for the finale of the Shaman fight. Everyone immediately forfeits, letting Hao win and ascend to Shaman King. Yo and pals now need to fight their way through these 10 different biomes, each guarded by a different patch priest, in order to make their way to Hao as he communes with the Great Spirit. Meanwhile, the Gandhara team are off getting them the other elemental spirits. Like Hao's Spirit of Fire, these are the most powerful spirits available for defeating him. Yo and pals battle through, making it to the final biome, for Hao awakens as the Shaman King and immediately kills all of the shamans on the island. Waking up in the Shaman King's realm in the Great Spirit, Yo and Hao have a quick chat. Hao tries to kick Yo out, but Yo's not leaving. The other elemental warriors show up with their elemental spirits and the final battle takes place. Before it can conclude though, everyone else shows up. From their interactions with Hao, primarily from Yo, Hao has lost his ability to read minds. He's opened up his heart just like Anna did after meeting Yo. Hao then meets his mother for the first time in 1,000 years and agrees to not yet destroy all humans. Yo and pals have however much time they have left to fix the world before he wipes it clean. The build-up to the ending is honestly so good. It's this Elite Four style progression where the main crew have to take sequential battles against some powered up patches. Some enemies, some friends. It's this brutal fight against not only tough opponents, but also the clock, having to manage how much Furyoku they give to each fight. Give too much and there won't be enough to fight Hao at the end. Give too little and they risk dying and losing so much more on a revive. That being on top of trying to get to Hao before he awakens as Shaman King. To achieve their goal, they have to kill each patch before progressing. Some are big meanies, so no worries, put them down, but for Silver and Kaleem, it's really bittersweet. They have an obligation to their tribe, and may actually be brainwashed to fight Yo. Kaleem will always go down as one of my favourite patches, not only from his character design, but from how much of an absolute champ he is to Horo Horo and the team, letting them rest and recuperate before pushing forward. It's through these battles leading to Hao that we get closure on the personal stories of the other lead characters. Horo Horo finally reveals his backstory, how he feels he caused the death of his first love, living with that guilt the whole time. It turns out she's been his spirit Kororo who transformed from being a human at the time of her death and has been his guardian spirit the whole series. It's beautifully written and it fits the character perfectly, giving him this opportunity to fully embrace who he is and not run from his mistakes in the past. Likewise for Ren, his journey has been about breaking the Tao's influence over getting revenge. This primarily got resolved in the early chapters where Yo and pals go to save Ren from his father. Where this comes into play in the ending is that since Ren killed a patch priest during the tournament auditions, he now has to face that patch's brother Necrome. In his fight, Ren acknowledges what he's done and pushes Necrome to hate him and unleash all his emotions at Ren, cutting the chains of hatred by releasing the emotions rather than suppressing them, taking a self-sacrificial view of someone else also caught in family hatred. Ryu's one is an easy one. His journey has really been about finding his best place. Before the final biome, he recognizes that his best place is right there, alongside the people who care about him and rely on him. The one piece was the friends he made along the way. Overall, the side characters get satisfying conclusions to their own personal journeys. For Choco and Lyserg, they both really reached the end of their arcs before this. Choco's story getting resolved during his fight with Golem, and Lyserg's being more subtle over the latter chapters, especially on his trip to Hell. He never really got that big, oh I repent of my murderous ways kind of thing, which again fits the character really well. I do want to say that while I think these are done well, Horo Horo's is admittedly rushed. The backstory around Damoko, his first love, is both developed and paid off all in the same chapter. Rereading from the start of the series, this reveal makes sense, but it's hard to say that it was intended or foreshadowed from the start. It's a good part in the ending, but it's not really set up to give that punch like, wow, Damuko was Kororo, everything makes sense. Likewise for Ryu, I don't think he has a strong personal arc beyond looking for his best place, so perhaps it's incorrect to address this as the end to his arc. Why I bring this up is because it seems like Ryu is finding his best place alongside his friends, but that's where he started. In the early chapters, when he's just being possessed by Tokugero, it's his gang of friends that run to help him. A gang of friends just as devoted as the ones he has at the end. But again, that might be just be reading too much into it. Regardless, the push to Hao is wrapping up all these other stories so we can focus on the main event, Yo and Hao.
We're dead! We are dead! All dead! All gonna die! Dead men be we! A cornucopia of pain and despair is coming our way to ensure our demise! We are so going to die!
Picking up at the final biome, Yo and pals are fighting Rutherford and getting some interesting details on the Shaman fight, which we'll come back to when we talk about sequels. All of a sudden, the biome turns off as Hao awakens. This is such a good moment that it just needs to be shown. The Oracle Bell starts reading so small. The new king awakens. Yo, for the first time in the series, loses hope that everything will be okay. This is how absolute Hao's power is. Goldver busts into the biome, maddened from seeing the awakened Hao. Then Hao's body walks in and kills Ryu just by looking at him, finally killing everyone else on the island with a single thought: annihilation. Yo is transported to the Shaman King society in the Great Spirit. For a quick bit of context, the Great Spirit is the culmination of all spirits past. When someone dies, their spirit goes into the Great Spirit, into a society that reflects who they were in life. For example, if you were consumed by war, then you'd end up in a never-ending war with others in the same circumstances. If you spent your life pushing everyone away, you'd end up alone. Shaman King Society is Hao's own realm. Think of it like the penthouse suite of the Great Spirit, and only Hao should be allowed entry. Hao's brought Yo in to chat with them. It's through this conversation that they can speak as brothers, not as enemies. Yo understands what Hao wants to do and has thought about doing exactly the same thing, but that's not who Yo is. Hao, seeing that Yo won't change his mind, tries to kick Yo out, but he's not leaving until he helps his brother. This is when the rest of the other elemental warriors arrive with their elemental spirits, ready for the final showdown. It's mentioned that it's the power of the elemental spirits that's allowed them entry to the Shaman King Society, but this might not be correct. It's quite possible that Hao has nearly unconsciously allowed them entry to stop him. During the lead-up fights with the Patches earlier, the team wonder why Hao let them take Opacho with them. Whether it was just Hao being cocky, or if by taking someone with the same mind-reading powers as Hao, he was asking to be stopped. Keep that in mind because the rest of the ending suggests that the latter is true, that whether consciously or not, Hao is letting himself be stopped. So the fight ensues, and it quickly turns into the universe versus Earth. Hao oversouls the Great Spirit representing the universe, while the elemental spirits represent Earth, fighting with supernovas and ice ages in this epic in the purest sense showdown. As Hao summons a black hole to finish off the warriors, everyone shows up, and I mean everyone shows up. Families, enemies, allies, spirits, and a bear. Everyone's here. When Opacho comes out, Hao dissolves his oversoul. Sati from Team Gandara comes forward and confirms our earlier thoughts that somewhere inside Hao's heart, he wanted this. Also, that Hao wants to see his mother again. Another spirit comes forward. This is Ohachio, who is Hao's first spirit. He says he's been with Hao's mother these past 1,000 years. It's Hao's anger and sadness that has kept them away without realizing it. Think again of how societies work in the Great Spirit. Hao was consumed by these feelings, so wouldn't make it to the place where his mother was. This is when Anna comes forward and reveals that the work is already done. Hao has lost his ability to read minds. This is just like what happened with her. It was encountering the love of others, especially Yo, that has freed him from those feelings and that power. And this is when Hao's mother enters. Hao began his journey to spiritual godhood and attained his powers after the death of his mother. She died because she was a shaman, and the people around her accused her of colluding with demons. This is what starts Hao down the path he follows, and as written, is fundamental for his hatred towards humans. Hao's mother slaps him and scolds him for being wrapped up in hatred, and advises him to love his people, giving him a mother's hug, which Hao may have just been waiting 1,000 years for. Hao tells everyone that he hasn't changed his mind on killing humans, but will give everyone present the time they have left to fix the world. And this, bar the epilogue, is where Shaman King ends. This ending is exactly what it should be. Yo fulfills his goal of stopping Hao, at least for the time being. He stayed true to his character and the heart of the series, finding another way to beat Hao rather than through battle, as he really couldn't be beaten. Tying his redemption back to Osorezan and Anna's story, tying to one of the central ideas of the story, being that chains of hatred can be broken by love and acceptance. Just like Tokagero, like Ren, like Horo the X-Laws, it's one of the key messages of the series. Even at the end, Hao's convictions don't change in a day. His character stays true and still plans to eradicate humans. His plan's now on hold, rather than stopped altogether. From an external view, this ending gives our main characters a chance to show off how high the power ceiling can go. It brings back nearly every character we've seen through the series, a love letter to those who have been reading from the start, giving each a chance to speak and take part in the ending. This ending hits every single point it should. So, why don't I think it's great? I don't like being negative about series I enjoy, so please take this all with a grain of salt. As mentioned at the start, I do have a general dislike for endings, so perhaps I'm being a bit tough here. Let me say, I don't think it's bad. I think I'm just quite hard to please when it comes to endings. Firstly, Hao's mother. She plays a pretty significant role in the ending and is built up as someone crucially important to Hao's character. Now, if you've just read Shaman King itself, she shows up for all of 2 pages in chapter 230, and that's it. Same for Ohachio. Besides a quick vision that Yo gets while fighting the patches, he does not appear once in the series before the ending. However, again, he's given importance in the ending. Now, that would be fine if they played a small role, but Hao's mother is written with such importance to Hao that it needed to be built up more through the series. This is like how Horo's backstory earlier both built up and paid off that reveal in the same chapter. Hao's mother feels like she's given this great importance right at the end without enough support from earlier in the series. Now, this does exclude Mappadoji, which is the side story introducing Ohachio and explaining the backstory of Hao, giving more importance to his mother. Why I don't like this is because the side story is not included in the complete edition of the series, meaning that you need external content to understand this series' conclusion. I remember when I read this for the first time, I had no idea who Ohachio was. Who was this guy and why is he important to Hao? I've read the whole series. I should be able to understand the ending. This is my biggest frustration with the ending, and it goes on to be a problem with the sequel series as well. Secondly, and this builds on the first point, I found Hao's turn too rushed, or should I say, too subtle. Taking the events literally as written, Hao's redemption felt too quick. It's like evil, 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 and now I've come to accept people's love. After rereading again, I actually disagree with myself here and have changed my mind. Hao's redemption is quite nicely done, if maybe a bit too subtle. I think this really begins when Hao stays with Yo and pals before heading down to Mew. Then Hao giving Yo Opacho for the patch gauntlet before the ending itself. Each is a quiet step in opening up Hao's heart for the big push in the final chapters. I give a lot of praise to the subtlety in Yo's character, but maybe I missed the subtlety in Hao's too. After going through it, I definitely think the ending is better than what I thought before. However, I still can't look at it and say, yeah, that was an amazing ending. But in all honesty, compared to other series that I've read, Shaman King's ending does fall on the better than average side for me. I really hope other people do love it. I'm really glad Takei got to come back and finish it on his own terms. I understand completely if I'm just being a negative Nancy when it comes to looking at endings, but this series is just important to me, and I have such high expectations after such an amazing journey. The final chapter of Shaman King is both part what we've discussed earlier in the ending and part epilogue, picking up 7 years later. We meet Yo and Anna's son Hana and Ren's son Min as the old gang meet up again. We get to see what they've done in regards to Hao's last demand to fix the world. And the answer is, not much. I love this, and it's developed so much more in the sequels. After the fight, the team come to terms with the scale of the world and how much of a difference they can make. Lyserg saying that they're at a dead end. It's money after all that makes the world go round. Yo and Anna coming in saying that everything will work out, because that's what they promised Hao. They also allude to the fact that they've been working around the world, presumably in regards to creating that better world, but that's it. That's all that we get out of the epilogue. I really like this epilogue. Yo and pals have been given the decree to fix the world, and that's not an easy task. This is picked up in the sequels, especially the offhand comment from Lyserg about money making the world go round. The sequels play with the idea of fighting capitalism, and it's honestly so interesting. There's so much to talk about on the sequels that that's going to be the next video. One that relates back to the ending is one that I said to keep in mind earlier, what Rutherford was talking about in the final biome. She says that perhaps the Shaman King fight was set up as a way to clear the sadness and pain provided by wisdom, a way to investigate the heart. It's described as Intelligent beings progress because they aim to know, but wisdom brings sadness and pain. With those, you cannot investigate your own heart. The shaman fight potentially was set up to be that investigation of the heart. Originally, this was something that I didn't really give much mind to, but it's specifically mentioned in the sequels, so it brings it new context. In that context, it was regarding who set up the shaman fight originally, if it's supposed to be an investigation of the heart. In the main series, it just fits so well. This shaman fight was the investigation into Hao's heart, which by the end of the series gives him a clarity of character for his time as Shaman King. That's as far as I want to go on sequels this video. Again, I don't want other stories influencing the value of the main Shaman King story. If you're interested in the sequels, there'll be some links here-ish once I get that video out. Shaman King is a great series, one with a lot of build-up and a satisfying conclusion. Overall, Takei has done a good job of pulling together the series into an ending that stays true to its themes and characters. While I think there are a few spots that it slips up, overall it's not a disappointment. Shaman King remains a series that I'd heartily recommend for the reread or even for the first time if you've just spoiled yourself horribly here today. Thanks for watching. This has been CG, and I'll see you Gs in the next one.